Cringe is something unique to all of us, namely what we cringe at. It's all over the place and you can't really give a set example of what it is because of how vast cringe can reach. But you know it when you see it. In times past, cringe would be a verb exclusively, as in I cringed when I watched the king poop his pants up on his little royal balcony. The word cringe is Germanic, deriving from the Dutch word kriegen. Kriegen roughly translates to heel over. Kriegen would make way for cringe with a double E by the time Middle English found its way on the scene. The word cringe would commonly be used to describe the act of falling in battle after this transition to Middle English. I guess people today are falling in a metaphorical battle, one could say. The word cringe, not as we know it, would become less common only a few decades after its adoption to Middle English, later fading completely out of regular use, especially in the context of falling in battle. Fun fact, the word cringe was as likely used in the 1860s as in the 1980s. I saw a Google line chart, don't know how they gauged that, but I trust it enough to relay it to you all. Depending on if I found this obscure graph, you could see the evidence in front of you. It wasn't until the emergence of the new millennia, the second to be exact, that the use of the word would begin taking off in popularity once again. Popularity would be found especially in internet culture, but under a new definition. Over the past decade, the word cringe has evolved into an adjective. To give an example, people are described as being cringe, not so much as having cringed. The statement, "I cringe," to me personally is a less common saying than referring to something as cringe. We could go on a whole diatribe about how languages evolve. For example, if the flow of a sentence works with a particular word choice, such as a response to quote-unquote, "who all was there," I think it should be completely acceptable in the English language to go, "it was me, Michael, James, Bob," and so on. Proper English dictates you include yourself after everyone else, and in the form of I no less, which sometimes just sounds weird. Either of the choices in which you include yourself is fine with me. I'm not going to correct you. Interrupting a conversation to point out a grammatical error in everyday speech, especially in the flow of said conversation, is more cringe than a minor syntax error.
But you told I that you loved I.
And I am, Jen, I really am. I love you, I just don't in love with you. Not anymore.
Name one way why.
Look, it aren't you, it's me.
I'm 100% positive anyways you're not pronouncing environment the way it was originally intended with any accent.
Environment.
I'm also sure you've heard someone describe another person as cringe. I did it just now with speech patterns, and assuming I hit the line correctly in my script, it didn't sound unnatural or forced. This isn't new information. It happens every day for me. Moments where I internally go, that's cringe. Cringe has taken on a unique syntax, similar to cool. A few examples are, things are cool, that person has a cool personality, and so on. It was only natural we fill the other side of the one-word sayings, the anti-cool, with a word just as simple. That person is cringe, the industry is cringe. Despite the need for some conjugation being present, cringe has stuck around and seems to be catching on with no sign of downtrend since its initial rise in internet culture. To give more examples of how heavy the reintroduction has been, you don't say things make you feel cool. They look cool, and what makes you feel whatever emotion plus the feeling that what you're looking at, be it person or thing, is cool. Cringe is similar, yes, you can cringe, as it's been a verb in days past, but the adjective use seems more in place in today's society. It's a cause and effect reasoning with something being cringed to already causing you to have cringed. As obscure as cringe as it may be in itself to get this introspective about words changing meaning, cool doesn't just refer to a temperature anymore. We'll end our delve into language here, as I could go on forever about how as long as you're communicating effectively, let people talk the way they want. Slang is crucial to culture. We're using the word as much as we were back in the olden days, just under a different meaning. So besides a rapidly rising word, what is this new cringe? Well, because we're all unique individuals, we think at least one person or another on this planet is flawed in their opinions, giving us that icky no-good feeling of cringe. This creates a cringe chain reaction that leads to everyone on the planet being subjectively cringe to another person. No one can escape the cycle of cringe. Even if you left society to go live in the woods, someone somewhere would think the idea of living in the woods is cringe. I'm not saying you would really care, because you're surrounded by the beauty of nature and you've returned to your roots as a hunter-gatherer, but still, point being, someone would think that's cringe. The emotion is a unique blend of disgust and mockery, and that weird feeling of not being able to look away from a car accident, especially if it's performative like dances or pranks. You don't feel anger, but the shroud of good grief comes over you quickly. I've been obsessed with cringe since I found my first comp back in 2013. For me, it was an instant fascination with the bizarre and unnerving, trying to familiarize myself with all of the heinous actions one can take to end up in a cringe comp. In other words, I wanted to watch as much as possible so I knew what not to do in real life. To become anti-cringe was the mission. This mission would be futile in nature because of the cringe domino fallacy mentioned earlier. To prove this point, there's definitely a moment in your life you can recall where you did or said something embarrassing, and if you think about it, it'll instantly make you tighten up and go, why did I do that? Sorry to make you think of it right now, but, you know, trying to make a point. Early 2013 cringe comps today are just everyone's For You page on TikTok. Pretty light stuff overall. Topics in the early days of cringe were furries and anime weebs, and you could always count on a few rare gems of like terrible rap battles or poorly executed fights. Sure, those things still make you cringe, but with everyone having access to the internet and a camera, those topics, to me at least, are considered low-hanging fruit. It's everywhere and easy to find. I am not a furry, and I think they've become more renounced from the limelight of cringe. Same with anime weebs, but there's still actions to avoid, like not wearing a fursuit to school or cosplay outside the appropriate spaces. For the anime one, especially don't do voices, don't quote scenes, don't act like some protagonist, don't yiff, don't make yourself out to be an animal or other fictitious creature. Oh shit, this came to me while going over the final draft, but that thing where you pretend to switch universes, I don't know if that's still going on, but yeah, you did not go to Hogwarts or any other universe. You're not a wolf, you're not a fairy, you're not a super genius mastermind who deserves Elon Musk's attention back when he was still kind of cool. There's a difference between giving a reality check and stomping on someone's dreams. No one's saying you can't dress up, write, or live out all your worldly desires, but you have to have a basis in reality to a certain degree. If you think you're anything other than a human person, you're just baseline cringe. But like I keep saying, no one is free of cringe, not even me. That doesn't mean you can't reduce your capacity for doing something cringy though. I got, you know, a tad picked on when my nerdier side came out at school. The world used to be a lot like a sitcom with nerds and popular kids. I would talk about my affinity for high fantasy and anime, which wasn't as mainstream as it is now. But either way, I still had the social skills to be considered, you know, well adapted and typically non-cringe. No cosplays or voices found here, no siree or madam or gender-neutral persons on the spectrum because that's not cringe. It isn't. It's not ironic to be, you know, gender is a spectrum. It's not cringe. Whatever. Even more so than the basics, you can set yourself up to be cringe in multiple ways. Hopping on political open mics, attempting a thirst trap, offensive humor, trench coats, pranks, channels, religious zealotry, public rage. The list goes on for what can end you up in a cringe comp, but honestly, it's not that hard to be a forgettable face in the sea of people you pass every day. Cringe, despite appearing seemingly harmless, does have real-world effects and stems from a lack of understanding of the environment around oneself. I've seen a few videos where people will talk like anime protagonists in the face of conflict with serious consequences in store, which is just insane. It's insane. Watch this one.
So what I need you to do right now is I'm not real comfortable with you being this close to this stuff, so I'm going to back up a little bit.
Good.
I'm going to back up.
Back up. Right all the way to your desk.
No, I will not do it. Would you please call security? Call it, or this is threatening behavior. We need an officer in here.
You dare to humiliate me. You think you can do that?
Are you kidding me?
The teacher clearly feels wildly uncomfortable. He felt what he was saying, speaking with his entire being, his whole ass chest. A large portion of the time, I don't believe people are intentionally trying to be mainstream cringe. I mean, there are those doing it for reactions or engagement on social platforms, definitely. But who willingly wants to feel ostracized by their peers? A lot of surface-level cringe can be derived from the intertwining of fiction and the real world. Thinking that things will work out like they do in TV and movies is a great way to do something you'll end up regretting. Most of the time when it comes to cringe within niche subgroups, like, I don't know, My Hero Academia and anime, it's outsiders that enter the so-called cringe community, picking the easy targets to showcase as cringe. In this case of cringe, it's often those kids who are going to cringe at themselves when they see what they posted in a few years. The results being posted by outsiders into the mainstream internet on like cringe comps or so forth. It's kind of meta, but yeah. This effect can kill groups, fandoms, or hype for something pretty quick, especially if there's a flood of these types of content shares, like, you know, rapid sharing of the cringe content. To play devil's advocate, most things taken out of context will probably look bad, but also it's not like those who have been caught committing the alleged sin of cringe should be immune from repercussions. They did post openly on the internet for all to see. I just wish the larger view of the world didn't narrow down the fan base of any IP to an example of cringe. Back to what I said earlier, everyone is cringe to someone, but as a general society, some acts are more egregious than others. Just as certain topics should be criticized, there are others that are off limits from being called cringe. We'll get to that list later in the video. Even I, who streamline ideas of understanding and compassion, find things cringe. I know, but my cringe rests in the real world. I have a love-hate relationship with people who act like total NPCs, psychos, or main characters in the real world. This is the only cringe that still works for me. Socially awkward people don't really bother me too much if they're not hurting anyone. We'll talk about this also later in the video. That and something else that recently happened to me caused a new form of cringe I didn't realize I was bothered by. I have a platform and a small enough audience, so I'm going to do this next part without it feeling like targeting. I got a comment saying that one of my videos is cringy at best. It was on my how to turn success into failure. Not going to say who it is, and I don't really care if you go look. I mean, it seemed like a throwaway account anyway, to be honest. Normally this type of thing doesn't bother me, but personal experience is the best way to make a point, so that's why I'm sharing said anecdote. What's cringe to me is that this person who left the comment has contributed nothing to the platform. No videos, no shorts, no nothing, nada. It's not even the biggest issue. The biggest issue is that I don't care if you leave criticism, but make it criticism at the least. Hey, this video sucks because your cuts are choppy. Hey, this video is ass because of the point you made not really making sense to me. Say whatever you want about the content I make, but come on, use the energy you take typing up a message to make it worthwhile. If you think you can do better, go on, do it. Like, what? I don't delete comments mainly because free speech is dope, but also so my cool kid subscribers and viewers can utterly roast the shit out of them if they choose to do so. You've seen me admit my faults in other videos. I've acknowledged I am wrong with some of the science I've used in the past, but when it's brought up to my attention, I always make a point to highlight the correction in the next video. When you add nothing to the grander scheme of it all, from what I can see, then you go and leave a stupid ass comment, that's what's really cringe. My final thoughts on being called cringe? No, you. Remember to be nice to people. I just brought this up as like maybe an opinion worth thinking about when you comment mean shit. Say all you want, but just be constructive with it. Moving on. I'm an adult and don't have the mental capacity or effort to think cringe as those superfans going to conventions, overzealous about a franchise, or a kid with undiagnosed ADHD doing something in a classroom that would be considered out of place. What I'm saying is, cringe has transformed for me. It's no longer poorly executed cosplays or fursuits. My cringe needs some actual substance of an implication in the larger problems of a society. r/actual public freakouts is a great place to find, how do I say this, more mature cringe. TikTok dances and lip syncs are soft compared to some of the videos you'll find on this subreddit, not to glorify any capacity of violence, as when our issues become more worldly, so do our cares on what people are doing. Besides annoying comments, what's more cringe to me is the destruction of public property, freakouts on service industry workers, and oh, don't get me started on the NYC subway clips. Take a look at this video of a gentleman using a fire extinguisher in a sealed, crowded train car, on Christmas Eve too. What about the multiple clips of just random tirades of racism that happen in those same spaces? Just because humans gather in one place doesn't mean we have to act like there's a bunch of humans gathered in one place. Here's another video of a fast food worker taking an unnecessary abuse from some pissant customer. Once you're removed from the bubble of adolescence and begin to understand and care less about the trends these kids are doing, you turn your focus to the big person world and the big people problems. Looking at comps of kids being cringy just kind of doesn't hit the same. My default setting just sorts it up to kids will be kids and ah, today's youth sure are spirited. Check this out. I'll play some real cringe versus what I call surface cringe.
They all have the regular ears.
Let me have the kitten before you lose it.
Maybe I don't want to give it to you.
Okay, then you can leave.
Well, you have an attitude.
I'm gonna take the kitten from you.
No.
I'm gonna call PD.
Over a cat?
Can you call dispatch?
Now you're really not getting the cat.
Okay.
If you call the cops, you're not getting the cat for surely.
I work with the police department.
Yeah, but I don't have to surrender an animal to you.
don't.
It's an option.
You don't. You're absolutely
Yeah,
right.
I found the cat and you're having an attitude.
What is your plan with the kitten?
I'm gonna put him in a blender.
Okay. I'm glad you're recording that.
Right. I don't know. She looks kind of tight. Might go for it later. Lube it up, slip it in. No, I'm just joking. I'm joking. Here.
Animal controlled up on PD.
Now you're really not getting the cat. See, now she's trying to call 12. See?
Ah, my darling. Hello there. Well, it's my new fedora. It's very nice and stylish, and this is going to be my new hat now. Folks, this has been my unboxing video of my new fedora.
But the knife.
But as always, I'm Tommy NC2010. I'm keeping you On the inside.
If you had to pick which one is worth giving a shit about, would you go with option A or option B? As an adult in my mid-20s, I would say that casting judgment on literal children or compiling them into a compilation is more cringe than whatever they could be doing times 10. You're probably sitting there telling yourself, Gideon, what about adults in life who are cringe? I'm so glad you asked. Most of those people who have an obsession with certain topics or activities considered cringe are likely developmentally delayed in some way or another, whether that be social norms or communicating 100% effectively. You shaming them doesn't do anything positive for making them not cringy to you. When I say don't shame certain folks for being traditionally cringe, I mean just don't bully the little guy for being different. World of T-Shirts, an infamous TikTok star who's up there with Daniel Larson and that one Australian guy who goes by Spidey, but will purely focus on World of Shirts, aka Josh, deserves his own video entirely. If shown to teenage me, however, he would have been considered cringe. Today, I have sympathy for the man. He's a struggling alcoholic who's being taken advantage of by those around him. Simply pointing and laughing, calling him cringe, doesn't do anything besides make the world more cruel. With that said, there is a long list of shitbags and Karens out there that are cringe, and the only redemption they can hope for is public lambasting. Here are a few more clips.
Yo, no, you fucking my man all up. You messed him all up. No, you're doing it all wrong. See? I got you, bro. I'm good. Here. You gotta... I'm got you.
There has to be a line drawn in the sand for what we stand for. To transition from my earlier statement of cringe for adults, the following things are not cool and deserve the shame they get. They'll each be followed up with clips so you don't think I'm capping, as the youth say. Racism. That one's easy.
These bombings?
Oh, so I've done the bombing?
Yeah, you have.
So I've done the bombing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
People like you.
What have people like me doing? By doing what? Where are you going? Sit down.
You look down on us.
You know what? Pretty much any prejudice, just to get it out of the way. This includes sexism, ableism, ageism, making fun of another socioeconomic situation, ethnicity, disabilities, and anything you know you're not supposed to make fun of. Don't play dumb, just don't do it. I feel like thirst traps are fair game, but in the same way your comment could just as easily be cringe because you're, like body shaming people, or whatever,
Weird things girls find attractive. The eye roll thingy. Choking.
You know what I mean? Just like those, you can get cringed out by thirst traps. Moving on, and speaking of thirst traps, those old dudes who post weird heart eye emojis under photos of models.
I can do it. I can do it. I can do it.
Their comebacks can be gold or even more cringe. What's important is you may roast them. Pretty much anything Penguin Zero says is cringe is dubbed as such. I don't make the laws, I just follow them. I saw a video on his channel where he talked about a guy that gave a shout out to his sponsors after he was saved while climbing Mount Everest by a Sherpa while dying. So yeah.
Saved by a Sherpa. And after his life was saved by this fucking angel, a hero that literally carried this man on their back down the mountain to safety so they could be airlifted out. In response to that unbelievable action, the guy started thanking his sponsors, and only his sponsors. He never thanked the Sherpa that saved him, or really any of the Sherpas that helped save his life and perform this incredible rescue. He only had his sponsors.
That's cringe. Crypto, tech bros.
After Fast and Furious 7, didn't. It's our bad. Now, while we don't have The Rock here today, we do have the...
Some, not all, commentary channels bullies the occasional stand-up comedian.
Sorry about that. I'm really sorry. Hey, what kind of water do you guys drink? You guys drink from the city water, or you guys...
Ian, Wendy Williams.
How dare you! I don't like the mother, I don't like the father, I don't like any of them. Nope, none of them. Fire everybody and escape now, Brittany.
James Corden.
It's James, isn't it? When the presenters are up here and when the recipients are receiving their awards, don't stand at the back of the stage with your hands in your pockets, looking around as though you wished you were anywhere but here.
And those film bros who watched those movies, I'm talking like Blade Runner, Drive, you know what, those movies that like Ryan Gosling was like, yeah, those guys who watch those movies are like, oh my god. But yeah, those guys. Amateur podcasters with bad takes, paid financial course advisors, pretty much anyone selling financial advice in any other form.
I mean, I feel good. As a James Bond fan, I feel like James Bond. Even logically, I know this, of course, it's not James Bond. I'm not James Bond. But emotionally, it takes me there.
Then a book, and even that is iffy, is a scam and cringe. There are tons of things that are free reign for you to sink your little cringe-sucking proboscis into. A steady source of cringe can be found with your local politicians. Politicians are hella cringe. Look at Florida right now as a big example. Cringe has become such a nuanced art because what you call cringe can be a larger indicator of your flaws just as much as the person you're calling out. If you think homosexuality is cringe, you're clearly homophobic, and like I said earlier, discrimination ain't cool, yo. Homophobia isn't a natural ideology. No ideology, I suppose, is inherently natural other than reproduce and survive. It's safe to say, though, that your homophobia or whatever issues you may have stem down from teachings that you've been passed on or environments you've environmented. Where cringing at the wrong stuff is already cringe in itself, cringing at the right things can be seen as noble. My main point in talking about what cringe is or what it's okay to call cringe isn't really to persuade you to cringe at anything you wouldn't already do so at. I just think we all unanimously as a society need to move on to our second tier cringe phase. Cringe 2, Electric Boogaloo. Do what you want because there's always going to be someone with something to say. It's inescapable, and to limit yourself to what others think only hurt you. Live your life without hurting others or caring what others think. From my years of watching cringe content, don't be annoying or bother others and you won't be cringe, at least to a degree where millions of people will remember the moment immortalized on the internet. I've been your host, Gideon. We're super close to hitting our first 1,000 subscribers. I've got a cool merch release idea once we get there. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy this one. I appreciate the extra week of patience between this release and the last video. Hopefully I was able to live stream and make some quality shorts in the week leading up to this video's release. If not, fourth dimensional sorry coming back at you from the past. Once again, I am your host, Gideon. Please like and subscribe. Peace out!
If you finished your career without a championship, you would not have looked at that as a failure.
No, I would have looked at it as being extremely disappointed because I had a dream and I had goals that I wanted to accomplish, right? And if I don't accomplish those goals, I have to ask myself why, right? So from my position, the reason why I would not have accomplished those things is poor leadership, failure to communicate properly with my teammates to put them in positions to be successful, lack of preparation. You know, all those things would be reasons why I don't win. Right, so now, if that was the case, in my career, I have to sit and I have to analyze that, and then as I move and I evolve, you know, post basketball into business or whatever, those same weaknesses are going to reveal themselves there, right? So if I don't learn from that, I'm going to struggle here too, right? So I can take those situations and learn from those and have them, you know, make me a better person later in life. But if I don't take that stuff and apply that someplace else, then that's failing, which to me is the worst possible thing you could ever have, is to stop and to not learn.
Countless people will tell you how to achieve success, mostly with 5 easy tips or the power of habit. But if you know me and what we do here on this channel, it's take the road less traveled. So that's why this week's video will give you some surefire tips on turning your pretty decent life, possibly even great life, upside down and right into a hot garbage fire. 100% money back guaranteed. You and I are creatures of habit, little pattern-seeking goblins. I'm sure you follow a repeating ritual for certain acts, like getting up in the morning and brushing your teeth, in that order for one. You could brush your teeth in bed, but who am I to judge? This is a great habit to develop. It promotes dental hygiene and lets you start the day with minty freshness. Others like to eat breakfast, work out, or enjoy the lax nature of the morning. Obviously, these are all habits of success, and they're no good. Building a consistent and effective morning routine is the basis for success. Some even exert extra preparedness during events of importance, such as laying out your outfit the day before. To induce as much stress and unneeded hurry into your life, sleep until the last possible moment and let the day propel you into the unknown with no preparedness or comfort. Maybe even wait until the consequences far outweigh the amount of sleep you would end up getting, just to really solidify the negative. Sleeping in is one thing, but we're not addressing maximum suffering potential for failure. Instead of just sleeping in, stay up really late the night before doing something that you could do the next day, but aren't prepared to cut off the day you're on for. Mine's video games. Staying up late is weird because there's a sunk fallacy cost that entrances most people. Oh, it's 3 a.m. and I have to be up at 5 a.m.? Better just stay up all night. I've worked days and nights being midnight to 8 a.m. From my experience, people weren't meant to be nocturnal in any sense. Coming home and sleeping till 4 p.m. after you get off is not the move, and it throws off your eating schedule more than anything. I personally experience bouts of anger and morbid thoughts when doing these shifts. To give a metaphor, because I don't think we've used one in a while, it's as if an evil eldritch god floating around in space was sending broadcasts of anger and sadness right into my brain. Also probably didn't help I was watching a lot of horror movies and a YouTube channel by the name of Exurbia, who is a huge inspiration for this channel. I actively have to go watch his and others' videos to make sure I don't plagiarize. This combination of crack and weed made my eyes bleed. Wu-Tang! If this little anecdote of my own suffering from lack of sleep doesn't convince you, then maybe the biology will. Some of the many benefits of sleep, but not limited to, are you get sick less often, steady weight is easier to maintain, lower your risk for serious health problems like diabetes and heart disease, reduce stress and improve mood, and so much more. Sleep is for those who enjoy living and feeling good. Not sleeping, or having a plan for sleeping, is A1 to start a steady decline. Typically, successful people are seen as honest, hard workers who always try to do the right thing. Look at Keanu, everyone loves him, and he seems to be a decent person. In order to correct this for our purposes, start lying needlessly. Lie about everything. How's your day going? When you messed up? When you can't make it to certain events, giving the most unbelievable excuses, even like your dog just had a birthday 6 weeks in a row. Little things at first, but soon it will come natural, and more likely, you'll be caught in your web of lies. Most people don't enjoy being lied to, so once you're known as a needless liar, it only goes downhill from here. Let's use a person from history as an example, and trust me, it'll hit. Richard Nixon lost his campaign for presidency against pretty boy Catholic All-American JFK, which didn't go too hot for JFK, but he's not who we're using in this example. Every dog has his day, and the abrasive rough and tumble Nixon would become our 37th president years after that poor Kennedy fellow had his accident in Dallas. Dick Milhouse Nixon, despite his later years, was a president with fairly good approval ratings, with a personal all-time high just around 67%. Not bad. It's only after the whole thing with the water in the gate that he would go on to resign from the Oval Office at a meager 24%, the only president in United States history of 245 years to do so. 245 isn't really that long of a time anyway, but still. To become president, you by definition have had a successful political career. One might go on to say you've had the most successful political career depending on the actions you take as president. Even being forgettable is bad at this stage. I don't know about you, but Bill Clinton is a cool dude, and the thing he did doesn't really change my opinion of Slick Willie. It's taught in schools, though, that Nixon was a villain for his involvement in Watergate. If you don't know what Watergate is, then allow me to illuminate you. Watergate was an act of espionage committed on American soil by Americans against other Americans. More specifically, Nixon paid Americano-Cuban nationals 200,000 big ones to break into Democrat headquarters and steal some sensitive info. Unfortunately for Slick Dick, his plans would fail when a security guard saw that there had been a break-in. It would be revealed by the former deputy director of the FBI going by codename Deep Throat, that Nixon was involved in the Watergate scandal, releasing the information to 2 reporters at the Washington Post. This would lead to an investigation that ultimately revealed that Milhouse had been keeping tapes of conversations happening in the White House. Aw, government doesn't like that. Government doesn't like invasion of privacy. Feels bad to have a weak old taps on you. Nevertheless, the American people wasn't too fond of this, leading to that resignation I had mentioned earlier in the video. You may only know Nixon from the Watergate scandal, but prior to these events, his notable achievements as president include: in 1973, he ended the draft, moving the United States military to an all-volunteer force; founded the Environmental Protection Agency in 1970 as a response to rising concern over pollution. The agency oversaw the passage of the Clean Air Act and Clean Water Act. Nixon also became the first president to give Native Americans the right to tribal self-determination by ending the policy of forced assimilation and returning their sacred lands. All in all, his career was headed on the path to a relatively successful presidency. However, it was his execution of lying out his ass about everything that cut that pretty short. Nixon would never see jail time. He should have, and would have, but received a presidential pardon from Gerald Ford. So, yeah. Richard Nixon was at the top of the world, literally, leading the #1 nation to a prosperous future. If only he were a straight shooter. Prime example of how to be a failure, though. Great job, Dick. This is a textbook example on why being an honest person is only for the successful, and how being a lying shit is an A1 tip to failure. Nixon's a good segue into our next tip. Traits are just as important as habits, and being a bitter, mean person, for no apparent reason, is a great start to failure. Keeping your emotions in check is for the well-adjusted. Being able to compartmentalize your life is too hard for us looking to fail. So let's get messy. Here's the lowdown, and this part's easy. Let your emotions run rampant. Got caught off in traffic during your commute? Take it out on your coworkers. Unexpected bill? Oh boy, your family looks like prime targets. Blame everyone but yourself. All the cool failure kids are doing it. Spiral into needlessly negative emotions for no reason other than it's easier than actually facing your own problems. Empathy, compassion, responsibility, all overrated and overplayed for the successful. Throw those all out the window, we don't need them. You're watching this video on turning success into failure, so I assume you already know the importance of these traits. One that often goes unnoticed is consistency. It's not enough for successful folks to have traits mentioned earlier, but they have to be consistent too. Unbelievable. We here do brief spurts of inconsistent, stagnant work. Here's some days we're powerhouses to be sort of reckoned with, other days we may as well be a rock. Having off days is okay, even for the successful. You can't be perfect all the time. But you should try and follow a routine of, okay, this is when I work and this is when I relax. Following a routine is a great way to build positive habits and traits. It creates stability in your life that otherwise isn't there organically. Discipline and consistency, both extremely underrated aspects of success, but since this is how to be a failure, don't do any of those. What better way to show this than by giving another example? Everyone knows about Richard Nixon, but I guarantee you most of you have no idea who James Dyson is. Our story begins in Norfolk. That's in England for my Americans. A young man who has lost his father at an early age to cancer takes an interest in mushroom-shaped auditorium theaters. Looking for funding, James seeks a senior engineer, Jeremy Fry, at the university he's attending, however is denied. Despite being denied for funding, young James would go find himself in the midst of a new mentor. Fry would ask James to design an aquatic cargo craft by the name of the Sea Truck. Following the success of the Sea Truck, James would go on to design other vehicles successfully. Unfortunately, trouble was brewing at home. The Dyson family was exceptionally dissatisfied with their new top-of-the-line Hoover vacuum. The bags, the filters, and suction was lackluster, often resulting in clogging. Fortunately, with his engineering prowess, Dyson would start tinkering on some suction designs using a rotating filter to trap debris in a reusable container, no bag needed. James would go on to produce over an astounding 5,000 prototypes till landing on the final product of the first Dyson vacuum. And the world would never be the same. Taking a look at the sheer number of attempts, it's fair to say Sir James Dyson, who would be knighted later in life for his contributions to British engineering and technology, knew a little thing about consistency. Dyson would make over 1,000 of these prototypes a year. To say his investment had favorable returns is an understatement, as Dyson Appliances continues to break technological innovations with releases like the bladeless fan. Dyson, the company, is estimated to be worth a cool $1 billion and some change. So yeah, it pays to suck. Dyson's consistency in pushing forward through 5,000 failed attempts is insane. The sheer number is insanity. I would fail 8 times doing something and probably give up, but 5,000? Unthinkable. However, to those who know success, every failure, every miscalculation is a learning opportunity to go forward from. It's a fairly common saying that you don't learn anything from success. To those watching this video, in order to fail, you have to have an utter lack of drive or consistency, provide nothing to the world, not even positive emotions, be a negative, inconsistent, lying shit, and failure is sure to follow. I guess this could also be a guide on how to be successful if you watch it backwards or something, but like I said in the beginning, the road less traveled. I've been your host, Gideon. I hope you found this video entertaining, useful, or downright appalling. Like and subscribe for more, and new videos every Friday. I once met someone who was in the National Guard that said that they had never had depression. Keep in mind this person's mother had died from cancer years prior, they had been homeless, and they stood their ground in the J6 riots. We came up on the topic of depression after I expressed I was feeling a little low, and they wanted to know about the experience. I told them what depression meant for me, and how I identified the symptoms as they related: lack of appetite, morose, and antisocial, to list a few. This video is titled Anxiety. So how did we get onto depression? Well, similar to depression, anxiety is mental. It's a bit different in the way that depression can be overlooked in the daily hustle of life, creeping in on the peripherals of the monotonous. Anxiety, however, will not be ignored. It's a reflexive instinct that makes itself known the second the adrenal glands above your kidneys start working overtime. Raised heart rate, profuse dread, and a feeling of nervousness. I think anxiety is a bit different from being afraid. Fear is a survival mechanic. If you fear something, you'll do everything in your ability to remove yourself from the source of fear, hence phobias. Being anxious is a step down if you ask me, but not necessarily less important, just more manageable. You may say anxiety is a part of the human condition, as we're meant to be nervous. But if that's the case, why do domesticated animals like dogs and cats experience what we have dubbed separation anxiety? Is it a personification of ourselves? A lot of emotions can be summed up to a survival mechanic, sure. Love, physically to reproduce DNA, and anger to ascertain resources to keep reproducing DNA. Anxiety, however, is a tier up on where it falls in the Maslow hierarchy of needs. Right in the middle is the desire for love, emotionally, and a connection amongst your community. This is where anxiety comes into play. We as a species are extremely prejudiced and tribalistic when looking for an outgroup. It's not in our nature to believe everyone can have everything, so why not our tribe have it all? The fear, not anxiety, the fear of experiencing the consequences of resource shortages was laid in our DNA long before we were even the species we know today. Most people will do anything not to die from starvation, even cannibalism. The spanning ideology of grouping up amongst common beliefs is where the cause of social anxiety is rooted. To fulfill the Maslow need of connection, the individual needs to build connections among others in their surrounding communities they've placed personal value in. In other words, making friends or even becoming closer with one's family. Relating back to tribalism, the group or groups an individual is attempting to connect with may have a high prejudice against the outsider, looking to alienate the interloper or potential group joiner for the slightest step out of line. This feeling of appropriate nervousness is what we call social anxiety. Lambasting from the in-group can be brutal, and even take place on individuals who are just in the same physical proximity. It's this proximity that the in-group determines is an attempt at joining the tribe, and therefore validates what we call bullying, leading to that in-group anchoring to certain aspects of the individual that are particularly offensive to them. Examples are social interest, wardrobe, mannerisms, use of syntax, and your standard handicaps. However, as a global society, we've kept in rotation on what is acceptable ramifications, whether this be social alienation, physical retaliation, or emotional abuse. More importantly, in American society specifically, we've become a lot more central in terms of social behavior. Where it was once acceptable and encouraged to discriminate against homosexuality, this has completely changed, having public figures being accused of queerbaiting. In other words, faking interest in the same identified gender. Imagine saying someone was queerbaiting in the 90s. The main line of questioning would be, why would they do that? This desire for acceptance within the overall societal in-group is where social anxiety begins. A telltale example is when you spill a drink in a public restaurant, the consequences of which may be low stakes, having caused the service staff an inconvenience, or quite literally non-existent, as the service staff does not think twice, having done the same thing moments prior. However, the mental anguish can vary drastically to the individual. You know you're not supposed to do that, spill your drink that is, but you have because of your own shortcomings. Now the whole restaurant is looking at you, the waitstaff hates you, and you'll be shunned from society as a leper. This is a glimpse of someone with social anxiety disorder. Better yet, the waitstaff hates you for even entering the restaurant even though the system of tipping is the primary income for waiters and waitresses. Yeah, social anxiety is weird and cultural faux pas don't do us any favors like elbows on the table. Social anxiety is a good tool to have, but it can also do some serious damage on our self-image and wreak havoc on our inner psyches. A lot of scenarios that make us anxious fall under social anxiety whether we realize it or not. Instances like job interviews, family gatherings, or public appearances, quite literally appearing in public. This is because the in-group is not always as simple as the cool kids at school. It can be the company you want to join or the family you're tired of being a black sheep in. Social anxiety helps us by maintaining social norms and followings. I had crippling social anxiety as a teenager, I feel a lot of us do, as puberty and teenagers are automatically associated as wrong. and treated vastly different per individual in the in-group of adults and children. I was tall, lanky, and just trying to find my place in the world, and often children are cruel, including myself. Now, as a matured early mid-20s adult, I experience what is deemed general anxiety. General anxiety is described as anxiety about your surroundings, life, or particular area of nervousness. General anxiety, like social anxiety, is a survival mechanic, but hey, let's explore deeper. I think of the word dread as a facsimile to anxiety. It's not crippling like fear in most cases, given the exception of anxiety disorders, but does jam up the works of cognitive thought. Existential dread is not an existential crisis, if that example assists you. You think about your place in the universe and if it all really matters, but it doesn't consume you. General anxiety in the case of a disorder is a persistent feeling of anxiousness or behavior that is chronic and will not dissipate when events are resolute. I personally experience general anxiety when it comes to the longevity of the world. I truly think a giant meteor will end us before any nukes do, and think of how I can survive the meteor, very egotistical. Other non-mental illness-related general anxieties can be directed towards an individual's perception of the world. One who lived in America during the 2008 economic recession would probably experience anxiety surrounding their finances or state of the economy. This nervous behavior when examining the world is an appropriate reaction, which in the long run might help you better endure the recession. Largely, I think people experience anxiety about their own mortality, and in a vainer sense, their self-perceived success. Everyone, in other words, wants to succeed, and no one wants to be a failure. We measure success often by achieving self-set goals. Anxiety can push us to be better versions of ourselves, leading lives of healthy living and hard work. If you feel anxious when relaxing because there are things you need to take care of that are in your control, that could be an exceptional use of one's anxiety. I'm a large believer that humans are on top for a reason, and every evolutionary trait holds its place for a reason. Looking for patterns where there are none. Anxiety is no different, and as the saying goes, everything in moderation. It can be a useful tool that can propel an individual to the top of the societal ladder, or the depths of insanity. My advice from one person who experiences major anxiety to the next, try not to worry about it if you can. There's already so much to realistically be worried about, but it's important to stay focused on the now. If you made it this far in my video, I really appreciate it. I wanted to make a video on this subject for a long time. I have merch in my socials, so go check that out. If you like this video, like and subscribe. Peace out. Thank you. Thank you. Bye. You are not a bad person, first and foremost. Your impact on the negative overall status of the human race has been minimal, if not insignificant, at best. Not to say your life is insignificant, it isn't, but going on a branch here and assuming you're not a rapist, cold-blooded murderer, or other offender of morality to such a degree, you probably haven't even caused a negative impact to an individual. One might go so far to say you're a force for good in the world. It's a low-effort take to state that most people in today's world are good. I'm sure you, the viewer, could have come to this conclusion on your own, especially when comparing the grander moral compass of humanity to this point, and what we deem, and have deemed, as bad behavior. You're probably here to gain a deeper understanding, and hopefully a sense of catharsis towards your status in the world, and as a person, so I suppose a little bit of elaboration could be in order. You are not a bad person, but that does not mean you are without faults. Let me tell you a story that happened to me recently. In my latest video, Do You Know the Unknown?, I stated a bit of incorrect information, and what's a better way to admit my faults than in the next video, making that this video, to be precise. Black holes, a topic we delved into in that video, flat out do not destroy matter. They send the matter out as gravitational particles. This is in contrast to my statement that black holes destroy matter. For this, I'm sorry for the misinformation, and would like to thank Justin Jackson for drawing attention to this. My bad, folks. That's an easy fix, for me at least. However, life is complicated, and not always as simple as stepping up to tell the truth. You may, or someone you know may, have an issue with taking accountability for their own mistakes. It could be from conditioning or environmental factors that they feel the need to deny their own mistakes. For this, I have tolerance and understand the fear of ramifications, to a point. It was at a certain point, though, I realized people admire those willing to take accountability. It's stepping up to the plate and saying, yes, I did this, that those around you will have respect for. Most importantly, you will have respect for yourself. We deem our own stance as a moral figure in the world by the way we perceive our actions, and if we feel like our actions are villainous or bad, then we in turn feel like bad people. Making choices that do not align with our values tend to cause this. Primary side effects of making choices that don't align with your moral compass or have consequences that you are not prepared for are guilt and shame. Shame and guilt are human emotions strictly. I stand by this. I don't think your dog feels that bad when you get onto them for pooping on the carpet. They feel scared of how you'll react, sure, but a dog is just doing what dogs do, and there's no shame in that. At least, not to the level human shame reaches. Guilt is a good emotion that keeps us in check, similar to anxiety. You can go check out my video on that subject after this if you'd like. But guilt, more importantly, is more avoidable than anxiety. I have guilt in my life, but they're more apt as being described as shoulds. I should go and try to see my family more. I should be using my degree to make substantial media, voila. And I should have gone to work instead of calling in. I did that today, and now I'm recording, but my tummy hurts, so that's probably why I sound a little off. To give some credibility to my statement of taking accountability for your shoulds, a lot of the time if you do step up, you'll experience little to no guilt. Your humble creator here got pulled over by the policia a few months ago. My inspection tags were 4 months expired. The cop informed me of this tidbit of info and proceeded to ask if there was any particular reason I had not gone to my local quick lube service to have this well-placed regulation fulfilled. There were 2 reasons. 1, my car, a 12-year-old Camaro, was falling apart and I wasn't sure it would pass. Additionally, I'm a lazy shit. I told the cop I was a lazy shit who got busy with other stuff and didn't have time. Not 5 minutes later, I was driving home with a verbal warning, and that week I got inspected. It pays off to be honest, and sadly even to cops. I kid. I'm just kidding. Just tell them the truth unless you're doing like something super duper illegal. I don't endorse crime, like forget that statement, but I'm gonna leave it in the edit because, it's funny and I'm feeling a little weird today being sick. Notice how the first 2 subjects I brought up were, you are not a bad person, but also take responsibility for your actions. I'm not one to tell you how to live by any means whatsoever, but if you are looking for advice on this video, then take that information away and use it. Try and be a good person, and you'll never be bad. Just trying actively, not like, hey, I'm trying and then doing nothing, but actively trying to be good. In the world we live in today, atrocities and war crimes happen all over, even on greater scales than in days past. Do you know why? Because a Roman centurion or a Napoleonic cannoneer would laugh if you said the words war and crime in the same sentence. Grape shot, war crime. Roman spear, war crime. Certain bayonets from the American Revolution, war crime. Now, I'm not endorsing war of any means, but it's a little more complicated than that. If we look at it on a larger scale, war is just a series of crimes, one after the other. The aggressor of any war or sender of any troops is a criminal by that definition. The perplexities of war cannot be singled down to an individual troop, as oftentimes those we actively notice become avatars for their country's actions. The American Sniper movie, based on Chris Kyle, took on a lot of flack for the US involvement in the Middle East, even though he was just a trained sniper, just like anyone else in his unit. Human beings are violent, sure, but in 2023, I would say most US troops are in the services for honor, financial incentive, or even maybe a series of decisions unrelated to the US's foreign affairs status. In a lot of countries, mandatory conscription or even form of limited conscription is still enforced. Take Korea as the most notable example. Ukraine has been caught on footage committing some less than reputable tactics against Russian invaders, but that's the thing, they're invading. People have been stripped from their homes that are now their battlegrounds, either to flee as refugees to neighboring countries or enlist in the fighting. What part of Russia's invasion isn't a crime? Wouldn't you as a Ukrainian soldier use every weapon in your means to defend the home country? Additionally, these people aren't soldiers. Remember what I said earlier? And even if they were, they're not the people who wrote what was acceptable in war, so how would they even know? I understand American soldiers following the rules of war, as we've got an advantage and a due diligence to keep things orderly as the global superpower. Nonetheless, just because you kill in the name of your country or whatever reason doesn't make you a bad person. It's the acceptance of the role and the purpose served that gives your actions a meaning beyond good and bad. The complexities of life are too vast to limit the primal nature of battle to black and white. Ethical dilemmas are also a source for shaking our moral grounds of good and bad as well. Take the railcar dilemma. In this dilemma, there is a track that splits with one person on one side and 4 or 5 on the other. In the middle, there's a switch for you to control the path in which a speeding train car will take. The only way I see this being the case in real life is if you're captured by some sick psycho with a good amount of wealth and resources. Nonetheless, I suppose we should talk about it a little bit. Honestly, to me, a good person would try to save everybody with drastically varying results based on your own skills. A bad person would try to kill as many people as possible by probably grinding the track and like flipping the switch last minute. Either way, it's not important. An ethical person would probably just hit the switch to kill one person, putting the needs of the many over the few. The dilemma has a lot of problems not to do that, because like on one side, like with a single guy, it could be a guy on death row. Not that I endorse the death penalty. I kind of do the older I get, but I'm trying not to become jaded in that fact. But like, you read about like these dudes and you're like, oh my god, why are you here with us? Like, how are you allowed to walk the mortal plane with us? Relating to my earlier discussion about effort, it's the effort I think shown in the railcar dilemma that solidifies what makes a person good. Serial killers, for example, are bad people. Take it from me, I look like one, but am a walking sponge for emotions. Serial killers are diagnosed as socio and psychopaths most of the time. This gives a bad rap to socio and psychopaths who have managed their diagnosis and continue to be an integral part of the community without killing or harming others. A good, not great example would be detectives. Their ability to remove themselves from gruesome crime scenes on the emotional level, mainly because they don't have them, and look at the evidence through an analytical lens allows for quick deductions. Not all detectives are psychopaths, as they are extremely rare. This lack of ability to connect in any meaningful way on an emotional level doesn't make them bad people either, as the tremendous effort put in by them to work with their diagnosis is what's important. If you made it this far in the video and not satisfied with what I have to say, then let me put it straightforward, but also in the form of a metaphor since we haven't used one yet. Yes, I know what an oxymoron is. Life is like Dungeons and Dragons. We're all walking around thinking that we're lawful good, doing the best we can, but to everyone else we're chaotic neutral, just running around doing seemingly random and worrisome acts. It's for this reason that a definition of oneself mostly does and should come from within. Like I've been saying, no matter how tired you are, keep trying your best and you'll always feel somewhat good about yourself. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. I have merch on my website that's linked in my socials. Remember to give it your all out there. Peace out.
Bell bottoms. Bell bottoms.
In this limited experience we call life, it's easy and natural to forget that it's our one and only go-around, at least in the state we are now. I would say this happens because the concept of before birth and after death are only external experiences. There's no realistic way to conceptualize what it meant to be nothing. Even more unthinkable is the circumstance in which you did exist, but only in parts following a specific formula that would result in what you are at birth. You don't remember being in the womb, and even if you do, stop telling people that you do because no one believes you and you sound insane. Be normal and just say, yeah, I gained consciousness around this age, but have fragments of memories that I could have made up just now to fill the recall need. More importantly, however, you don't remember being the egg or the sperm cell, and I haven't heard anyone bold enough to claim that one yet, so don't start. All this to say, we have one go-around in life, and if you've been living it like everyone else, it's been a solid mix of absolute bliss and pretty shitty. In your journey so far, I assume you felt moments of complete serenity. I'm not a guru, and don't want to be, but do this for me real quick, and don't roll your eyes or double tap to skip forward, otherwise the point of the video doesn't hit as hard. Close your eyes. Shut up. Close your eyes. Breathe in through your nose for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now slowly breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time, and out slowly. Be sure to relax your shoulders, just let it all go. 1, 2, 3, 4. And out. 1, 2, 3, 4. You just did some controlled breathing exercises. You may feel better, or skip to this part in the video because your attention span is fried. It's okay, not really, but whatever. Just remember to listen, actually listen to others in the real world. Listening skills go hand in hand with attention span. Bars. Within 16 seconds of change between the moment of then and now, the state of the world has remained mostly the same. Assuming you're watching this video, your problems, or your perceived problems, have not changed, but your overall perception of sense has. By breathing in and out and releasing tension held within the body, it sure feels like the world got a whole lot lighter. You've essentially performed a biochemical spell to relax. Continue to repeat this and one may say you're meditating, especially if you confront your tangles in this way. I point to this state of being, this slightly relaxed embodiment, as a reference point for our weekly topic, instead of another one of my videos to give more tangible evidence. Plus, you can only do that 3 weeks in a row before your viewers are like, yeah, we get it, you make stuff. I'm not a dickhead or so emotionally inept that I'd come out and state that your emotions are just chemical reactions in your brain, because A, that's lazy and low effort, and it's like saying humans are evil because all evil is perpetrated by humans. B, it's not true. Emotions are chemical reactions in the brain, but so is everything you are and see and do and will be and was. Additionally, everything ever is just a chemical reaction, alive or not. Based in Greek philosophy, a man is more than a featherless chicken, so it must be something else. Dang, I'm really giving it to philosophers this video. Even in a non-religious context, I subscribe that our consciousness, our very being, is more than the sum of our parts, but consider me no fool, I am aware of biology. A lot can be done to shift one's reality, and not in a disassociated way either. Now there are several methods. One is embracing the suck, as the United States Navy SEALs say, totally valid, and even I do this to a degree. There's immense value in stoicism, and using your underlying limitless human spirit to push through any obstacle. The other is shifting your perspective to look for the silver lining in the rough. It's hard to shift to a completely positive outlook on otherwise dire situations. Even downright harmful, as denying the state of affairs can undermine frustrating emotions that would be better expressed than repressed. Bars again. When I say look for the silver lining, I mean more overall train yourself to not succumb to your negative emotions, but redirect them into something positive. Working a meaningless job, sitting in traffic, spending your one and only life, doing what feels like tasks that are otherwise not worth doing, it's frustrating and creates a new emotional blend of staleness and anger towards your outlook on life. This video is called One Perfect Moment, and that's what your entire life is, whether you're aware of it or not. In Buddhism, the end goal is to achieve nirvana. Before we talk about nirvana, we need to explain the principles of Buddhism. In Buddhism, it's often heard by the rest of the world that one of the base principles, or noble truths, is all life is suffering. However, the translation is off, and there is no real one word in the English language that describes the suffering word and that truth accurately. The word suffering takes the place for dukkha. Dukkha can be described in the English language. It's not beyond comprehension, but suffering is faster. Dukkha is the feeling of unease, the baseline discomfort you feel in the daily life, the negative emotions that stem from wants, no matter how small. You want to leave work earlier and go home. That feeling is dukkha. You're in a bad mood stemming from hunger. Dukkha. The feeling of want in this scenario is the second noble truth. There is a cause to our dukkha. All want is suffering as translated to the West. Wanting to make more money, wanting a different job, wanting to feel closer to the ones around you. These to Buddhist teachings are all sources of dukkha, or dukkha themselves. Relating back to our earlier topic of nirvana, the third noble truth of Buddhism is that there is an end to our dukkha. This permanent end of dukkha lasting not only your life, but the eternity following in the afterlife is nirvana. Nirvana is often mistranslated as permanent happiness, but just like dukkha, in English it requires more words for an accurate description. In order to give weight to what achieving nirvana means, the state, a perpetual perception shift, goes beyond being in a good mood for the rest of your life. Going on from here, you could choose to follow the Eightfold Path as a diehard Buddhist in a quest to gain spiritual enlightenment. This is the fourth noble truth. If you do this, the rewards are limitless, and you have unlimited attempts, as until you achieve nirvana and move past samsara, you're in it to win it. Samsara is the Buddhist word for the cycle of death and rebirth. You can achieve nirvana in any stage of samsara, even animals, which are lower than demons on the cycle. It's not common, as you have to be aware of your actions for karma, your Buddhist credit score, to really have an impact on your enlightenment. Your best chances are as a human, because this is where pressure makes diamonds, in so many words. You can ascend to higher planes of heaven, but you'll be a spirit where all your needs are met. However, this is temporary and not conducive to enlightenment. Fret not, if you do make it to one of these higher planes, the described length of time in which you'll find yourself is varying levels of eons. Eons, as described by the Buddha, would be the time it would take for a silk cloth brushed against a large stone once every year to erode away. Now that I've given you a brief understanding of Buddhism, we can delve into nirvana a little deeper. Nirvana is not a permanent state of happiness. Even the Buddhists understand this is unrealistic. However, nirvana is a perpetual state of understanding of the balance in the universe, understanding of oneself and the infinite love and hate that you have been, could be, and always will. A sense of wholeness, completeness, that rings through every vibration in your form.
It's rare, but moments like these fall on me completely randomly, and I know I'm not alone. At home, at work, with others, or by yourself. Moments where the planets align above you, all feels right in the universe. Not happiness, but wholeness in body and mind. Fleeting moments of the infinite peace that can be obtained through how you see the world. The brief spurts of pseudo-nirvana, which is an oxymoron I know, are the one perfect moment that I'm referencing in the video title. Evidence suggests others experience said sensation, even going so far to harness these moments, but it's caught in passing under another name. The zone, noun, is a state in which hyperfocus is initiated during the execution of a task. I would say athletes are the most eye-catching example, but I have also heard others in passing say, "Oh yeah, I was really in the zone and got it knocked out." The zone is an interesting phrase, as it creates a unique dichotomy when taken as an example for what I'm trying to express. It limits itself, the zone. It's a temporary state only meant for high-stake instances or valued objectively by the individual. These almost supernatural states of being are considered momentary, on reserve, or even ordained by chance. They don't have to be, though. You actively set the tone to your own life, narrating through your internal monologue your perception of the world. By actively being aware, obtaining an induced understanding through either self-efficacy or sheer will, the moment doesn't have to end. I didn't make this week's video to give you a conversion class in Buddhism. I'm not even a Buddhist myself. I did it to remind you that you have so much control of how the universe is, and you've always had it. Like I said in the opening, it's almost natural to forget this is our one and only go-around. We're the conductors, not the environmentals around us. The utter disdain you feel for an enemy, use it to go a little further when you're out of gas, and understand this event has crossed your path to be used, not be used by. By accepting your emotions and feeling them in a constructive way, seemingly bad events can be understood. Everything happens for a reason, and even if they don't, you're still the one who determines what really is a bad event. Before we end this video, just let it all go. Just stop for a second. Stop being up your own ass right now. Life sucks sometimes, but it's truly amazing at all that we get to have bad experiences to begin with. Given the gift of existence, to be able to cry over the lost loved ones, to have ever even loved at all, is truly a gift we mustn't squander by being in unnecessary states of despair. I know it's easy to go, well, I've already did this much damage, so who cares? But the second you start rebuilding, it does wonders for the space you occupy. I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always I appreciate you giving me a bit of your time every week. I'm your host Gideon, peace out! Love is an underlying force for everything we do. Without it, we'd be mindless drones, walking around reproducing with no ceremony or significance. Even animals experience what we call love. Despite being commonplace in the everyday, love still remains elusive in terms of an exact description. If we were to ask a group of people from different backgrounds and cultures what love is, you'd receive a range of answers, some lengthy, others direct and to the point. Given the vast range of what love encompasses, we've got a lot of ground to cover, so let's get started. Going back a few stages in your metamorphosis, we start at babies. Who doesn't love babies? As a baby fresh to the world, you most likely don't understand anything, especially love. However, this is where we as a person receive our first encounter with this love thing everyone's always talking about. You probably feel love as a baby, but the focus at this stage isn't your love, but the love of your parents. From the moment of your conception, depending on your circumstances, you're likely loved long before you even have sentience. The love of a mother and father for one's child is boundless and primal. We've been long aware of this sensation. Famous country singer George Strait even wrote a song about a father who made sure his son got into heaven after he died, as proof for how strong the love of one's father is. Not even having been born, there are those who would do anything to make sure that you are, giving their lives for you if need be. In this fetal stage, your lack of personality beyond a few kicks and cravings is enough to create a lifetime bond between you and your parents, only raising more questions about love. After birth, eventually we grow past our babiness, where our love starts to go beyond laughing at recognized familiar blurry faces, into toddlerism. As young, walking and talking junior people, we expand your capacity for love, using our skills and behaviors to show the ones around us our love for them. Remember drawing pictures or making things for your parents to keep or hang up? It's small in the grand scheme of things, but this is where we begin to learn our proper expressions of love.
Verbalizing words of affirmation, wanting to spend time together for just the sake of it, and giving gifts, as mentioned earlier, are all ways children show love to those around them, and not a huge amount changes as we grow. These are 3 of the love languages, which we'll talk about later in the video. Besides our parents' and families' love, we as individuals begin forming connection with those in our environment not immediately related to us. We call these people friends. Despite being significantly less dramatic in most cases, we have a fondness and affection for our friends. I'm not afraid to say I love my friends, and you shouldn't be either. Love is not a limited resource that demeans as you give it out. It's limitless and comes from within. You decide the amount of love in your heart. Everyone needs a friend, and the importance of friends will only rise as we go forward in life. Some even make lifelong friends without even knowing it. Between the ages of teen and toddler, we find ourselves branching out more and more. We develop specialized interests like sports, art, and other activities. Love goes beyond people. You can have a true passion for what you do. What if the only time you feel alive is when you're out on the field or up on stage? You can love what you do and choose to do it with a smile every day. Along with activities and people, our love for things around us begins to expand beyond the inherited. Places, animals, items, acts. Love encompasses all. Growing into a spiteful teenager, our love becomes messy. It's not as simple as, oh, I love my dog, and oh, I love my parents. If anything, at this age, the perfect illusion that our parents know all begins to fade, and our love becomes circumstantial and situational, as they become people just like the rest of us. As a teenager, I was a force of rage and resentment. I had feelings of rejection from my surroundings because I moved around so much and my parents were divorced. I realized if I was lucky, I would spend at most 100 more days with my grandparents at the rate I was seeing them. I didn't love anything, not even myself, so I turned to the world of substances. Weed and alcohol did a pretty good job, but once I found pills, my love had returned. Pills were exactly what I wanted and thought I needed. A small little circle that contained a new emotional state letting me escape my loneliness. Need some energy to work? There's a pill for that. Need to relax? Here's another. Feeling a pain no one can see? There's a pill for that, yes sirree. What's worse is, once you're high, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, high, there's a sweet spot where no one can tell, and people actually seem to like you more because of your relaxed, confident demeanor. Or at least, that's what I thought. Those around you can always tell something's a little different, no matter how mild you think you're being. Eventually, the magic fades from substance abuse, and I was left even more hollow than when I began, now with a dependency. The substances no longer filling my void, I looked outward. If I couldn't love myself, maybe I could get someone else to do it for me. And as a teenager, your parents' love doesn't count, or so we think. As teenagers, feelings of attraction begin to enter the scene. It's at this stage that we begin to develop the earliest bits of our own personal sexuality. Around the teenage years, you'll take more interest in those around you in a more biological way, if you know what I'm saying. Those childhood crushes turn into personal desires. From the ages of like 13 to 18, I dated around a lot, breaking hearts. It's fucked up and disgusting, but I remember enjoying the feeling of making someone as sad as I was. In a way, I wasn't alone anymore. Looking back, I can't even place myself in my teenage shoes, being so far removed from that headspace a decade later. Children are cruel, and I'm not above humanity. My cruel love that I gave very limitedly still haunts me to this day. People are quick to blame their actions on their circumstance. I'm not one of those people. Despite my drug addiction and an unstable environment, I did what I did and I own those acts. My senior year of high school, I had an epiphany. I was ruining my life and turning into a loser. High school was the last stages of training wheels in life, before I'm released like a fish into the ocean in the real world. What had I been doing? Living out euphoria? The first step in the right direction would be to get clean. Over the course of the school year, I would go on to fight my addiction and my bad grades. The anxiety returned, my depression was present, I was having a crisis of identity. However, in the eye of the storm, clarity had struck me. I had fallen in love with the challenge of living. I got lucky, very, very lucky, to have the resources around me that I did, to overcome my demons. It turned out my parents did love me despite my years of rage towards them, for reasons that I didn't understand at the time. My brother, who I was a dickhead to for a majority of his birth, turned out to be my best friend. For the first time in a long time, I had felt the love around me in a new and healthy way. Shaping my act up and getting it together, it was by the skin of my teeth I had gotten into college. With my world completely turned upside down from 8 months ago, a new perspective on life and a clean bill of health, I was ready to face the world as a functioning member of society. Don't get me wrong, my life as a teenager wasn't all bad. I had moments of great happiness where love did prevail. I worked hard on my art, loving every piece I would submit to competitions, and also worked backstage in tech theater, working the ropes. Additionally, my teenage loneliness pushed me to find a deeper connection with nature and animals, something I still have to this day. The point of bringing up my own struggle about the teenage years in this video is to tell you no matter how dire the circumstances, love can still be found in all. With that said, congratulations. You pretty much survived the worst stage of being alive. Welcome to your 20s. Just when I thought I had it all figured out, bam, enters Kaylee, stage left. I was sitting in my intro to mass communications class during the first week of school, lost in thought and sitting in the front row because I was a good student now. A sing-songy voice out of my line of sight asked me a question. Hey, can I sit here? I was bad at eye contact then, so I only looked briefly, but she was wearing a blue Converse windbreaker over an NSYNC t-shirt. One thing was certain, she was beautiful. I quickly said no, go ahead. She sat down next to me and began taking out her notebook for class. I was stunned. I couldn't muster a word to say or even make direct eye contact, so I just sat there, mute, staring straight ahead like some kind of weirdo. Halfway through class, thank God, the professor tells us to talk amongst our peers about an idea we were going over. I looked over at the girl who sat down next to me, and she was already piercing me with her beautiful brown eyes. We talked briefly about the subject, but then got into our personal lives. She had mentioned that we also had another class together, but because I had sat in front of every class, I hadn't noticed her. Eventually class ended, and we began exiting the building together. As we were parting ways, I called out nervously that my name is Gideon. She hollered back, I'm Kaylee. Little did I know at the time, I had just met my wife. Love is crazy and swoops in like a hawk. Sure, it can be built up over time, but from my own personal experience, it's a wrecking ball. From the moment I met Kaylee, I was instantly swooned. I had never felt this way about anything. We've had our ups and downs since then, but through everything, we've only grown stronger for it. It's as if I found my other half I didn't really know I was missing. She's an extension of myself at this point with how close we are. We are independently dependent. Sure, we do great things on our own, but together, we are an unstoppable force that can move mountains. You, my viewers, will have no idea how happy I am that no one sat next to me that day. Love is boundless and shapeless. It takes many forms and indefinite quantities. As obscure as that is, it's about as accurate as it gets. To give more substantial terms instead of just saying love is something, you may have heard of love languages. Seeing as how I'm only 23 years old, I feel if I speculated on the future of love for me, it would be inaccurate and not reliable for you all. So for now, we end our journey through life, but tune in for Love Part 2 in 30 years on an update for Kaylee, our kids, and myself. Despite this being the end of our journey through life, for now, I still have more to say about love. Love languages, mentioned earlier, were a concept written about in a book authored by Gary Chapman in 1992. Today, people are more inclined to state as a fact that there are the Keystone 5 languages. I argue that there are more, but they get a little niche. Allow me to list the 5 briefly. Gifts, or the giving of them. Acts of service like mowing the lawn and making the bed. Words of affirmation such as telling your partner they look really good today. Quality time, just like really engaging and spending time with the other person. This could be going on a date. Finally, physical touch, making contact with your significant other. My problem with the 5 love languages is that they sort of imply that if you do these things, then your partner will feel love. Love goes beyond the categorization. You have to truly feel what you're doing. Moreover, I think the 5 love languages are side effects of being in love. You'll naturally do all of these languages to a degree if you feel love in your heart, no matter what kind. I'm a hugger, especially if we've met before. Handshakes are good at first, but hugging lets a person know that you have nothing to fear. Here I am, open to all you are. At least, in my mind, I try to make every hug feel that way. It's okay if our junk touches. It's not about that. It's about the hug, not the junk. Positivity is a chain reaction. Having a full and honest approach to each person, recognizing their own unique backgrounds, is a great way of spreading love. Not every asshole you encounter is going to be the same rude person. Surprisingly, everyone's terrible for their own reasons. But it would help the overall state of the world if you tried and approached them with an open mind. People often lash out when they're hurt, but you're so far removed from their situation, you just see the mindless lashing out. Show those who have been hurt in the past that you are a person who understands pain, that your love is limitless, and what it's capable of not only for the person in front of you, but for yourself. If you come to these videos looking for a message, then take this away. Love everything you do, every second of every moment. Love your fellow man, love your planet and your job. Wake up ready to make this place all the better, and use love as your motivator. Anyone can hate, anyone. To love unrestricted and boundless takes true strength. To give a good answer of what love is to me from my own personal experience, Love is the driving force for all that is good in the world. The same force behind every vaccine, every letter sent to faraway lands, every rainy day enjoyed from the comforts of your home, happy you have a reason to bundle up. The world isn't so bad, just remember to give love a chance. I've been your host, Gideon, and I'm happy to announce that we're getting super close to our 1,000 subscriber marker. When we reach this goal, I'll throw all the thumbnails from the last few videos on t-shirts and a limited supply merch drop on my website. In the meantime, please like and subscribe. Peace out! This video won't be focusing on the fear of the unknown. I feel as though so much quote-unquote stuff already focuses on that view as the basis or inspiration for their creation. Don't get me wrong, the video will talk about the fear that comes with the unknown and lots of existential questions, but this video specifically will not be dedicated to the fear of the unknown in its entirety. Without further ado, let's begin. Something that I've always felt was a double-edged sword is that as humanity has told its story in the history books and on cave walls, the inclusion of monsters, gods, and heroes begins to fade the closer to the modern age we get. Everything is perceived as being explained away with modern resources and technology. It's the loss of what seems like purposeful magic and mystery in the world that historians and archaeologists are still trying to piece together today, and that the everyday person tries to find in the daily grind of capitalist life. The overarching narrative of human history beyond a few thousand years is sparse and exacts, leaving a large portion of our origin unknown. People fear the unknown, sure, it's inherently nerve-wracking, but we crave it nonetheless. The unknown is a challenge to overcome, a riddle to be solved, or a mystery to be unraveled. Even in the modern age, the unknown keeps us going forward, as most of the 21st century discoveries in science only raise more questions. Let's start more toward the beginning of it all. It's strongly believed and accepted that modern humans first popped up in what is today known as Africa, with some scientists saying that there may have been upwards of 25 different variations of humans. This home continent is where we as a species did most of our evolving, bottlenecking, and eventually spreading out to the rest of the world. The info I just told you may be considered common knowledge to most, so let's take even more steps back. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old, and some change. Rocks, funny as it is, are 3.8 billion years old, as before that it was all liquid magma, which will make this next part really interesting. Once Earth had rocks, water, not as we know it, was soon to follow, as the hydrogen and oxygen began teaming up in the atmosphere. The Earth, at this point, was presumably just a big ball of acid water, with moving tectonic plates underneath, shifting against each other, eventually forming continents, but that's way later. All of a sudden, a big thing happens. Possibly one of the most substantial things in the entire existence of the universe happens. Life. Nothing like it besides the one instance has ever been found since, and most likely won't in your lifetime. This video isn't about the Fermi paradox, however. The first known life to ever exist was Luca, the last universal common ancestor, but not the first unknown ancestor. A single-cell organism that lived in high-temperature water near iron-rich vents in the Earth. Flash forward a few billion years, and now we pay taxes and find fossils of the little bastards who weren't happy with enough. The origin of life has continued to stump us humans even to this day, but to a single-cell organism running around during the dawn of creation, it would be common knowledge as to how it came about. Several theories have been floated around the noosphere on the origin of life. Aristotle once theorized that mud, left alone long enough, will birth life, hence the creation of eels. Makes sense when you think of those who create many biomes, scooping big chunks of mud in a jar, and all the critters begin to swim around who were in the mud. This was somewhat disproved, well, actually, it was disproved. When scientists left a pure slice of raw meat sealed in a jar, it revealed that maggots only came from flies sneaking in an unsealed jar rather than the rotting meat itself. So moreover, people don't come from mud. That's interesting, almost like life comes from an outside force. Some would say that there has always been life in the universe, and that in the case of Earth, it came from a meteor or transport medium. Others would speculate life originated during a pre-creation ice age that allowed for the chemical elements in the Earth to stabilize for life to develop. The Oparin-Haldane theory stated that organic materials such as amino acids could be formed by lightning under low oxygen circumstances. Surprisingly, the Miller-Urey experiment revealed that organic materials could be created this way. However, new evidence suggests the atmosphere was not low in oxygen at the time. Then there are creation myths, but more on that in a minute. It's widely believed that despite all the varying ways, a primordial soup, a starting point, or a spark in the darkness lit by another, they're all stating something in common. We don't know. In other words, every theory appears to be a reasonable guess, but not known factually. In other words, unknown. This question often kills people metaphorically, of course, because they're dying to know how we got here, even sentencing others to death at times when their outlook is different. To this I present a reasonable and sound question. What does it change? Of course, in some of the theories, the greater implication of an alien civilization, starting life on other planets for reasons that all lead to insidious motives, is concerning, and creating the source of all life in a lab seems a little taboo, even to the non-religious, I'm sure. On the grander scheme, however, you are here now, and that's all that matters. I believe a greater civilization did send a blueprint for life to our planet because it met the correct criteria, and that one day, maybe we could meet, even if it's in millions of years in the future. It's my personal belief, crazy as it is, that this civilization subscribes to a religion almost, of spreading as much life as possible to reconnect the galaxy. The purpose of sending out life is that the result may evolve and develop faster than the creators who sent us out here, leading to an earlier connection. Sure, it's human nature to conquer, but I think in a way, once we meet others, we will know our place in the universe. Our lives are incredibly short, 80 years on a good day. Imagine someone, a god, the god maybe, places you on Earth from the moment the central gravitational body of Earth is formed. Assuming you're immune to physical harm, you'd have to live 57.5 million lives. I'm 23 years old and feel 38. I think I would lose sanity on the third go around, or probably even halfway through the second. It's important as an individual when caught up on the source of life to know that the moment has passed. Sorry to say, but the train departed long ago. I love metaphors, so how about we use one? It's as if the train you're trying to catch already departed, but no worries, you are already on it somehow, but very young. So young, in fact, that you may as well have been a fetus who had to fight for his right to be the conductor of the train. Fetus to conductor, that's just who we are. As the newly assigned conductor of the speeding train, our main objective should be finding where we were headed, not where we left off, especially since the last guy was a big lizard. Look forward. Either way, no matter how we got here, it's all led up to you watching this video right now. Crazy, I know. Another big unknown is God or gods. God cannot be inferred as real or not real, known or unknown. Gods in older stories are often present as metaphors for nations, leaders, or events. Greeks, Romans, Egyptians, and pretty much any major empire with a few hundred years of longevity are known to do this. It's comforting in the unknown purpose or pattern of the universe to think an all-powerful pantheon is looking over you. I believe the source of the universe could be anything. A god is just as reasonable as a god particle. Taking an even more grandiose approach to the unknowns of the universe, we look at, well, the origin of everything. Earth formed over 10 to 20 million years, 4.8 billion years ago, but what happened before then? Some scientists commonly speculate the Big Bang was the start of everything. The Big Bang, simplified, described the theory of how the universe expanded from a highly dense point outward to what we know today. This theory is supported by discoveries made by the Hubble telescope and the distance between celestial bodies over time. Additionally, the Big Bang is supported by cosmic background microwave radiation and the presence thereof in the universe. When we begin to break down the fundamentals of the universe on a scientific level, the unknown rears its head once again in superpositions. We are made of cells. This has been established. Those cells are comprised of DNA and RNA. DNA and RNA are composed of atoms. Atoms are made of electrons, protons, and neutrons. Electrons are a base particle having a charge of -1. Protons and neutrons are made of particles called quarks. There are roughly 6 quark subatomic particles that we are aware of. There are also neutrinos, which are where electrons fall into, often having little mass. From here on, things get even more quantum with bosons. Bosons include photons, gluons, W bosons, and Z bosons. Photons are a particle quantumly represented as light or other electromagnetic radiation. Gluons are the exchange particle for quarks, holding it all together. Z and W bosons are just there, doing their thing, decaying into quarks, except for the top quark. That's its name, one of the 6 I mentioned earlier. Finally, we arrive at the Higgs boson, a one-time theoretical, now highly believed in particle that is believed to be responsible for the Higgs boson field. The Higgs boson field is thought to be responsible for giving quarks and other particles like protons mass. This is believed to be the smallest form of anything ever, except you may have heard of a little thing called string theory. String theory states that the universe is comprised of infinitesimally small one-dimensional strings. These strings would make up quarks and electrons. However, due to the constraints and the practicality of testing this theory, no suitable experiments have been discovered. My point in giving you a breakdown of physics and the origin of life is to give weight to what I have to say next. The monsters, gods, and heroes from legends are still around today, you just have to know where to look. Take black holes for example. A black hole is a condensed singularity, and there are two types. The first is a primordial black hole. Sounds super metal, I know, and they are. The violent nature of the Big Bang created these dragons not long after everything took off. Research shows that any matter that becomes entangled in the event horizon, the point at which nothing can become free, not even light, is no longer in our universe. It's assumed that anything pulled into a black hole is destroyed, including matter according to quantum mechanics. There are roughly 100 million black holes in our galaxy alone, and recently, NASA found one destroying a 375 million-year-old star. The other type of black hole is a celestial. These are formed from the dying stars. We know a lot about everything and know nothing about anything. The first black hole was only found 60 years ago, and before that, they were thought to only be theoretical. The unknown in the world, not just our universe, outweighs the known 1,000,000 to 1. It's as if we hit a button on a control panel in our train, only for a new control panel to come up from the floor, puzzling us, the conductor, even more. But hey, new buttons to explore. Black holes will never pose a threat to Earth in our species' lifetime, but do represent a question that will never have an answer. In a more literal sense, when we're exploring the stars, maybe, just maybe, the areas with black holes will have a little caricature saying, "Here be monsters." However, interstellar travel will never be possible in your lifetime. I'm sorry to say, but it's true. My main factor when considering the possibility of interstellar travel all comes down to the three-body problem. And distance, but that's less exciting. To summarize the three-body problem, it's an implication of chaos theory, if you like Jurassic Park. When there are two planetary objects in a closed system, which don't exist, everything, even you and me, possess gravitational pull, then the orbit and location of the planets are quite easy to predict, once certain information is known. It's the introduction of the third body, or a planet, that begins to mess things up. The influence that planets possess on each other presents many factors. When ran in simulations, a third body given even a decimal change in a factor varied drastically in results. In short, this means we can never really predict where a planet will be, and that's important when you want to go there. The magic of the universe and the great unknown will be a constant no matter how much we unravel and solve. The unknown potential you hold, what happens after you die, are there aliens, will there be a cure for cancer? All unknowns in the modern age could be translated into legends of now. That cure could be our fountain of youth. That unknown form we take when we die, is it rebirth? Do the lights just go out? Are we rewarded for our good deeds and damned for our bad? These are questions given an infinite amount of time will most likely never yield a definitive answer. Learning to accept that sometimes this is the end of the road in terms of understanding is easier on the psyche than trying to find the truth. Try and pick from the options of understanding. Do you choose to believe in a God? And if so, how do we proceed? Sure, black holes do go against the fundamental understanding of matter, but we'll never see them, so why not just think about where they might go? A lot of these larger questions plague my mind and are a reliable source for anxiety. It's always so easy to be in a complete polarized state of either the universe is too vast or the life we live is too limited. To find some kind of comfort in the obscurity that is our existence, a sweet spot is needed. There is still magic, but it's not commonplace and never was, and the universe could swallow you up, destroying your soul in the process, leaving your fate unknown. The world still has mystery, your life has more inherent value than a rock. Keep solving questions, but more importantly, keep looking for more. If you enjoyed this video, giving a brief description of everything, ever, hit that subscribe button. I'm trying to get these out every week and doing a pretty decent job of doing so. If you enjoyed this video specifically, leave a like and I'll catch you all in the next. Merch and links, thank you. The title of this video may seem a little extreme, but just like 1984, over the course of time and media, I shall warn you of how disabling the comments speaks louder for why we can't self-govern than the shopping cart dilemma. In my last video, I used a National Guardsman as an example of how depression isn't always as simple as a sad life equals depression. This time, I'll be using you, the viewer, as the starting reference point. Assuming this isn't your first exposure to the internet and this video isn't the first thing you've ever seen, extremely honored if that is the case, then you've come across media, whether that be images, video, or literature, that has provoked a reaction from you. This reaction, though not necessarily more intense than an in-person reaction per se, can cover the range of the emotional spectrum, inspiring you to leave a word of advocacy for the emotion you feel in the comments section. As we're well aware, there's this ever-growing demand for fresh and revitalized trends, whether this be popular memes or dances. Trends alone are insanity by definition, as every month or even week there's a new trend that defines the platform's main page, having real-world effects, especially when the trend is crime-related. However, just as impactful as they come in, the trends are quick to be thrown aside for the next big thing rearing its head on the horizon, or being cooked up by a little creator like myself. Every month since around like 2012, memes, now trends, as they evolved in the syntax, come out in increasing frequency. Additionally, I feel as though it's the growing popularity of social platform varieties that allow for the general users to feel more included as being creators. Look at TikTok, for example. It constantly displays quote-unquote, use this sound, or quote-unquote, try this effect, as a way of enticing the hidden gems of untapped people and personalities into making the platform's next main page hit. This video is about the downfall of free society, so how did I get onto new creators? Well, to give an example, my mom has a TikTok and she's a mid-50s adult woman with 2 kids, and I've seen her For You page. To generalize my findings, her For You page and my For You page are extremely different. It's this airtight algorithm that creates comfortable visuals that would put a new social space user in the safe mindset of creating something. Even then, however, my mom has only ever, to my knowledge, made one TikTok about her bulldog in a Superman costume. That's pretty easy, you know, like low-hanging fruit, nothing crazy there, but it's this open community that invites creativity that gets those who should probably change their opinion, in my opinion, before posting, that eventually just post anyways. Not my mom though, love my mom. I don't like picking on specific creators, I don't think it matters at this size though, but I will cherry pick a few examples and blur their faces and names to show what I mean. Even companies, which I don't think deserve anonymity, will upload some very, excuse my French, dogshit, wee-wee, post, as you can call them. You know what? As a matter of fact, let's start with a company so I can set the precedence of what's to come. Companies and large corporations are the bad guys of the real world, and if you're willing to have an understanding on some level of how far in the shit we are, we need them now. You know how many times GM has been bailed out by the government? They're not just doing that for no reason, they are a vital point of the economy now. Shoe companies, or more specifically, shoe companies that produce clothing, are some of the top dog bad guys for the uses of outsourcing labor to developing countries where they don't have to abide by American regulations, i.e. sweatshops. Nike is known to do this a lot. Converse, another classic American shoe company, now owned by Nike, I know, shocker, monopolies are a thing still, decided to take a different approach when looking for sources of labor, especially in the design department. As in 2021, Converse had found themselves in a bit of hot water for using certain shoe designs for a national parks campaign. These designs, however, were apparently submitted by artist Cecilia Monge for a 2019 Converse internship program. I remember seeing the posting of the original TikTok by Cecilia and finding the story pretty interesting. Being the curious person I am, I navigated over to the Converse TikTok page for some internet sleuthing, selecting the first post, an ad for the National Parks campaign, and going to the comments. Oh ho, comments disabled. Especially for an ad, that's weird. Let's do the strategy of finding a post with comments enabled to get to the bottom of this. Scrolling a few posts back, we find one. The comments pretty much held my own personal sentiment of, okay, and are we going to pay CC for these designs? And the such. On a post that was completely unrelated to the National Parks campaign. I think it was for jeans. Time to analyze this response from Converse as a means to relate it to the video title. But first, I need to explain some things about the government that my viewers may not understand. The government and the Fortune 300 companies of the American nation are all working towards the same goal of making America the richest country in existence. At the same time, in order to protect the very delicate economy of the world's richest country, we need large armies, breaking ground technology, and some of the most insane intelligence you've never met to do as good as we do now. It is insanely hard to run an empire that's pretty much democratic when it comes down to it, especially when in all reality, everyone is angry all the time. And the American government lets a lot slide. Guns. Road work takes too long, taxes are too high, and why aren't they doing anything about this? All common complaints of a functioning government. This baseline level of discomfort and the fact that you're hearing people complain about it is what makes this boat go as far as it does. It's this discord of the populace's voice, their comments, if you will, that make the government aware that despite their best attempts, here's what we as a governed people want in reality. Hence, a bit of democracy has been sprinkled in long after the official elections have concluded. Tying this all together, companies are so entangled with the government, the American people, and the world stage that I believe that we as a people have a right to comment or voice our opinions on anything they do, especially in America. You may say to yourself, well, why not make a video of your own calling them out as a way to draw attention to an issue? Because the second Converse can remove itself from the playing field, they will not be worried about the small creator responses, since it's not tied to them directly anymore. Converse essentially pulled the mic on a voice talking on stage and told them to go scream out on the streets about a topic not related to their surroundings. It's this ability to voice our opinions all together as a collective that straightens out the government. Are you telling me the government's best friend, corporations, is so above her that we can't say shit directly to them? Corporations are often treated like private citizens. Think I'm lying? Look it up. Private citizens. Now that's a new one, to most. So let's talk about that. A private citizen is you, me, and probably everyone you know. In other words, you're not a public figure. However, I argue that once you make a post that gives a window or voices your opinion, or God forbid, a defective opinion, you open that private life to the public, at least on this instance. Take, well, me for example. I get a few hate comments, really surprising I know, but let me just say, I am fully prepared to get called Jeffrey Dahmer till the end of time. Will I ban that word phrase from my comments? Absolutely not, because it's funny and I knew what I was getting into by being on the internet. It's this acceptance of name-calling that we're taught as children. Sure, it stinks, but sometimes you really are just being a little stinker. Let's check out some not-so-well-adjusted people and close out this video with my final thoughts on why we're headed to hell. Not really, but maybe. For example, this individual turned off their comments in an apology video. My main complaint with this one is if you're not willing to see what those around you are willing to say, then how do you know that your apology is accepted by your community? The next one, this one really gets to me because family and parents who put their kids up on social media, oftentimes they won't turn off the comments when a child is upset or having a moment, but will turn them off the second anyone critiques their parenting abilities. More subtle tactics of censorship are just deleting individual comments. Comments can be gross in that way, but a lot of times it's just, hey, maybe don't put your kid up on the internet, a valid complaint. This behavior is why I think most of us couldn't self-govern, as the dismissal of another's opinion is a personal freedom the US government is downright, totally fine with us having. I feel as though my stage analogy may have been a bit flawed in its presentation with Converse. To turn off comments is to walk into a crowded room where everyone is chatting, screaming shut up and shooting anyone if they think about talking. Freedom of speech and comments go hand in hand, and if you walk down the street saying nothing to no one, they'll probably say nothing to you. But if you go down the street screaming racisms, things will probably be said to you. You then have the option of removing yourself from the situation, i.e. not checking socials, but those people who saw what you did will most likely talk amongst each other about the crazy guy screaming racisms. A lot of those who turn off comments on posts where something controversial is happening cannot accept that perhaps they could be wrong in their opinion, so better yet, silence everyone. My name is Gideon, and if we could all just be adults who hear what others have to say, that would be really awesome. Merch and links, please like and subscribe. Peace out.
I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful. But we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent, and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world. Millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes. Men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are not cattle, you are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate, only the unloved hate, the unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery, fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, a decent world, that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite!
Despite the cute thumbnail depicting possible end-of-the-world scenarios, I dreadfully fear the end of it all with my entire being, my very soul if you subscribe to that kind of thing. If you knew me in real life, it would be very apparent to those who listen to me speak for longer than 5 minutes that I am mentally on edge all the time. It could hypothetically happen at any possible moment, even now, or now. I chose this week's topic, or now. I chose this week's topic as a means for me personally to confront my greatest phobia, lightening the weight on my chest and informing you, the individual, of the apocalypse that's not coming. When I say individual, I mean individual. I've read everyone's comments, I learn your names and your views on the world we share. Hi Deleted, hi TP4 Bunghole, hi Emrys, hello everyone. Keep up the likes, I really appreciate it, and more importantly, keep up the comments. They're the best part of this content creation thing. Without wasting too much time stating the importance of the video to me, as every video I make is important in some way, let's talk about why you don't have to worry about the end of the world so much, reducing your existential dread back down to the sun consuming the earth in 7.5 billion years. Sorry if that's news. Humans, for some sick reason, have been trying to predict the end of the world for literal millennia now, from Nostradamus to everyone with a Twitter, and despite years of practice, we haven't gotten any better. However, nowadays, people are more likely to tell you how the world could end rather than when, which is an anxiety-riddled video maker's worst nightmare. The open-ended possibility has me feeling like we're all placing bets on extinction roulette. Personally, mine's on Meteor Red. Turning back to the age of stone tablets, we start our journey to the end in the year 2500 BC, during the reign of the Assyrian Empire. This empire, or someone in the empire, predicted the earliest documented apocalypses by writing about it on a stone tablet. Namely, the tablet said to be on the lookout for children rising up against their parents and disobeying all the rules. It's especially important to be on the lookout for such an event because not long after, everything just kinda ends. Of course, I summarized a bit of information regarding the Assyrian tablet, but the humorous nature presented in any light regarding the sheer circumstance in which the supposed apocalypse would have proceeded is not lost on you, my viewer. The common saying that the children are the future is not felt by Mesopotamians. The children are the end, or thought to be. Looking back on 5,000-year-old prophecies, it's easy to laugh, and sure it's a good jest, but not without a profound message to our time. It could be 5,000 years in our future that we look back as a species and laugh at the idiots afraid of overpopulation or a meteor. Back to the Assyrian tablet, I believe it was a common saying from the era to get their children to behave, saying something along the lines of, "Oh, little Gilgamesh, you better be good or the world will end." Born in 1999, I was a part and not a part of the Y2K panic, but we should talk about it like I lived it, through the power of the internet. In short, Y2K is an event in which computers were expected to malfunction due to the systems using a COBOL-based two-number integer system ranging from 99 to 00 to represent the current year. This would present a real issue later in the history of computers because at the turn of the millennia, the numeric value would be a 99 and turn over to 00, which would cause errors in the machines. Some speculated planes would crash, trains would derail, and cats and dogs would start pairing up. Overall, Y2K was not real, as in the panic should not have been real in terms of doomsday prepping, but the bug was real. Yes, I repeat, the bug was real. However, companies invested collectively over $100 billion to employ programmers and networkers to implement solutions decades in advance to the year 1999. A man who deserves recognition by the name of Bob Beamer was the first to foresee the problem back in 1958. Y2K did happen on a much smaller scale because of this, but instead of airplanes and trains, it was parking meters and vending machines. This event would go on to speak volumes for the self-preservation skills of humans to create something we'd rely on so heavily that it would damn us if it stopped working correctly. Additionally, it would tell how even over 7,000 years later, we'd be making end-of-the-world predictions. Examining the deeper meaning and the perseverance of the human spirit, even if Y2K did happen to the full extent, it wouldn't be the end of us by a long shot. We just go back to a sticks and stones lifestyle with a dash of ancient tech thrown in at worst. But in reality, only systems using COBOL would experience the majority of the problem. Let me clarify my earlier statement about my phobia towards the end of the world. It's not a reset or collapse of civilization, it's extinction, total annihilation. More exact, it's my roundabout way of saying I'm afraid of dying, but it sounds better if I'm afraid of us all dying. After the end of the world scare that happened within 2 months of my birth, I grew up in a time when a movie called 2012, released in 2010, was free to terrify the youth of the world with its trailer of Earth pretty much just falling apart and giant waves destroying the Himalayas. As an adult, I found out it was because the Earth lost its magnetic field, or a solar flare. Either way, it didn't really make sense. That feeling, however, of the world being in constant threat or on a precipice of its demise didn't ever dissipate even after the year 2012 came and went, with no 50-mile high waves or shifting tectonic plates. The feeling continued to motivate me in life to be prepared for a lot of situations, but also instill an overall sense of dread in each waking moment. We'll start with the most obvious of the bunch, especially if you've been alive for the last century, and that is nuclear self-destruction. Now, of course, the implications of someone, anyone, dropping a nuclear bomb would be huge, so let's talk about it, shall we? There are roughly 15,000 nuclear warheads on Earth, and there are 4,500-ish cities. It would take 3 to destroy the biggest of the global cities, leaving around 1,500 after everything is said and done, not accounting for radiation, EMP blasts, and effects of the global supply chain. In my mind, that's a dub for humanity. The biggest nuke ever detonated was dubbed the Tsar Bomb and had a blast radius of 150 miles, but could not be considered operational as there was no artillery system capable of delivering the payload. The current largest operational nuke is the B-83, delivering a payload of 1.8 megatons in the form of a gravity bomb with a radius of 20 miles. To give even more perspective, the blast radius for the bomb dropped on Hiroshima was relatively small in the grand scheme of things. Bigger than a bunker buster for sure, but smaller than every other nuke made, having a blast radius of 1 mile. It goes without saying this twins the Nagasaki bomb as well, with 1 mile blast radius. Obviously, the challenge afterward would be tremendous, and it could be the end of us just as well it could be a new start. But just knowing there are not enough nukes to blow up the Earth entirely is comforting and an optimistic look towards the face of the abyss. Russia is the one who's constantly threatening nuclear armaments, but Russia has a very low survivability rate given the location of cities, population density, geographical climate factors, and so much more. If reasoning is not your cup of tea, then somehow they being the powers that be, if you must ask, you're too far gone, have come down to a varying number of nukes being used in the next century to 0.03% to 1% overall. Very low. The use of a nuke would not necessarily provoke an all-out end-of-the-world scenario. It'd be tense, but the likelihood of nukes being dropped has statistically reset the number to null. If every nuke went off in one place right now, it would leave a 10-kilometer crater 2 kilometers in depth. Additionally, nukes vaporize particles, aerosolizing them into the atmosphere, changing how the sun's energy is absorbed and creating colder climates. In other words, that's the nuclear winter everyone is always referencing. To refresh what we've learned, nukes wouldn't end the world, just the world as we know it. Humans would go on to survive most likely, but we've just blasted ourselves back to varying levels of the Bronze Age, that's for sure. If you're that worried about this flavor of apocalypse, especially, then Oceania region of the world is predicted to have the most favorable odds in survivability. Also, underground bunkers with a lifetime's worth of supply and renewable resources couldn't hurt either. Now that we've taken a somewhat surface-level glance at the man-made ends, except for clones, AI, superviruses, and horrors beyond our comprehension, we'll top off man-made apocalypses with climate change. Climate change is a shorthand saying for devastating environmental impacts that have been caused by man's treatment of the environment, primarily in the burning of fossil fuels and our emissions of greenhouse gases overall. People that I'll call misguided like to say climate change is non-existent. First off, I would like to point your attention to the hole in the ozone layer we briefly created with hairspray. In short, it's on track to be repaired, but that hole didn't just get there on its own. We did that. In case you didn't know, the ozone is a part of the stratosphere and protects us from super intense radiation that the sun gives off and also is just found in space. In the later years, people have more tangible standards on the state of the environment in the form of temperature. The most concerning factor that we're changing at a drastic rate is the overall temperature of the Earth, especially since the Industrial Revolution. Not much more to say about that. The increasing temp of the Earth shows itself in the melting ice caps and the uninhabitable zones rearing itself on the horizon. Zones that range so drastically in extreme heat or cold that even if humans wanted to live there, the temperature is not suitable given all the water in the world. Cold is a bit of a different story, but with heat around 145 degrees Fahrenheit is when things get dicey. Billions are expected to be affected by the impending climate crisis, mostly in developing nations as the rising sea levels will displace people from developed lands and homes, creating the worst humanitarian crisis to date. It's an important issue that needs attention, but in my mind, the imminent threat presented by climate change does not possess species, at least our species-ending capabilities. I grow plants, a lot of plants, just to help offset my carbon footprint, and I'm especially aware of myself and my place within the greater ecosystem. That feeling you get by being secluded in nature, the one that's becoming more and more rare, especially for the everyday person, is not by chance. Worst case scenario, we cook ourselves to death in a homemade greenhouse, but nature goes on without us. Age of the Plants Part 2. And even in nuclear war, it's still Age of the Plants, but with tumors DLC. All that said, I don't see climate change being the end of us, but be aware, the impacts may have consequences that we're not ready for. We move on to the heavy hitters, the big dogs of existential thoughts that plague the minds of men with no ease in sight, ripping away the bark that is your baseline consciousness and revealing the underlying layers. Let's start small and work our way up. Armageddon, Don't Look Up, Asteroid Movie Number 3. All real and hopefully not accurate movies on how we react to the revelation that a planet killer, an asteroid that can end all life, is headed straight for us, and we have limited time to save ourselves. Asteroids, or more general, floating rocks in space that I'm scared of, can come in any size that your tiny brain could realistically perceive being in front of you. To give some context, there are rogue planets just floating through space, not bound to a star or celestial body. Terrifying. Look down. Yes, look down, right now. See everything in your peripherals? All of it. Now imagine an object composed of highly dense metal is heated to thousands of degrees Celsius, speeding 12 miles a second. Now imagine it's headed towards your planet, and the world government just said there's nothing we can do, say your prayers and try to survive the looting. Or the world government gets together to try and stop it with some elaborate last-minute heroic plan, and it fails. And the absolute worst scenario, nobody says anything, and it just happens one day. Asteroids are terrifying because of the indeterminate number of factors that play into each asteroid or meteor. In a vacuum, mass has zero effect on acceleration, therefore a planet killer traveling in the sun's glare at these speeds would present a huge problem to us. Mass, however, does have a gravitational effect, no matter how small the body. If you remember the three-body problem, this means an asteroid we thought was all in the clear took a left turn at Venus and is now headed towards us. Light takes 8 minutes to reach the Earth from the Sun, and any particle with mass simply cannot reach this speed. It's the fastest force in the universe. Gravitational force is slower than light, but not by much, and not by much at all. I'm telling you all this because out of nowhere, an enormous object with immense mass could take us out like a bug on a windshield, and we wouldn't even know. With our current technology, we are gifted with the ability to detect meteors a few million kilometers away, giving us a few days' notice or even weeks. That's no time at all. There could be one headed to us right now, and there most likely is. It's just a matter of time. Scientists have, however, stated the likelihood of such a meteor is indeterminable when giving the exact number, as the sporadic pattern that Earth has been hit is random. However, there is a prediction that one will hit in the next 200,000 years, which could present a few catastrophic effects. As of now, however, NASA knows of 0 asteroids that could present a threat to Earth at this moment, and likely not for 100 years to come. The life expectancy is rising, so who knows, but you'll be too old to care, as the upper limits for the human lifespan have been predicted to be 120, 150 max, and I just don't see the mental faculty keeping up past 110. Supervolcanoes had a death grip on American doomsday preppers for a minute in the mid-2000s, as a piece of info stating the Yellowstone supervolcano was a few thousand years overdue for an eruption, as if it owed you a show. Nonetheless, the information had a few folks worried. Mainly, said eruption will black out the sky and throw the world into a long and cold darkness. Stop me if you've heard this one before, especially 70,000 years ago. Let me just go ahead and say, that whole thing where a supervolcano is set to erupt is just not true. It's not overdue, and if anything, we're 100,000 years too early for the next one. If this somehow removes the magic for you surrounding the scenario, critically acclaimed alternative history writer Harry Turtledove wrote a book trilogy by the name of Supervolcano, in which the volcano is pretty much regionally locked to America at least, and North America at most, with non-mentioned effects besides geopolitical relating to Israel occurring in the rest of the world. We talked about the unknowns in the universe in one of my videos. I know I don't shut up about it, but when you make a video that talks about everything, it's a good reference point. SparkNotes version, you ain't know nothing about nothing. Let's talk about some newly found, by me on the internet, interesting phenomenon that occur here on Earth that still have us scratching our heads to this day. Fairy circles. An occurrence in arid shrublands, once strictly limited to southern parts of Africa, but recently started popping up in Australia as well, are a unique botanical phenomenon that result in perfectly shaped barren patches, roughly 7 to 39 feet in diameter. It's highly suspected that a species of termites is the cause for the ones in Africa, but cannot be ruled out as the cause in Australia. They're very weird looking, and I know it's like Gideon, you're losing it, it's patchy grass, but still, it's got my attention. The next thing I found unexplainable, worth paying attention to, is skyquakes, a silly name I know, but taking a deeper inspection of the phenomenon reveals the layers of mystery surrounding such events. Skyquakes are an event when large booms and shockwaves can be heard and felt originating from the sky. These booms can rattle plates and have been heard all over the globe by numerous groups of people throughout time. Several theories on the cause of skyquakes have been put forward, all as reasonable as the last in my opinion, but here are a few of them I found most interesting. Underwater caves collapsing, meteors entering the atmosphere and breaking the sound barrier, avalanches, and aircrafts breaking the sound barrier, but this would not explain pre-supersonic flight instances. I bring up the supernatural phenomenon not just to bring up cool stuff, but to open your minds to possibilities of occurrences in the world that we simply cannot comprehend. Keep that in mind for what I'm about to say. Our next end-of-the-world scenario could be that aliens saw us a few thousand years ago and are on their way right now to exterminate us and take over the world. As old school as that sounds, the likelihood of this occurring is probably higher than you'd think, as even encountering another life form other than what's here on Earth could possess an enormous threat to our species. As amazing as it would be to think aliens of a higher intelligence would wish to make contact for benevolent reasons, it's unlikely, and the ascertaining of resources is priority number 1 for any life form. Tardigrades, or sea bears, are extremely resistant and have a high survivability factor, so much so they can survive the cold, irradiated vacuum that is space, for a time. If you are keen to believe that life is out there beyond the stars, who's to say there's not a planet-sized mass of single-celled organisms headed our way and spreading across the galaxy, almost like the Flood from Halo, or less likely, the Tyranids from Warhammer 40k. Even worse, what if this creature hunts by looking for planets who think about it, and in some sick way, by thinking about it, you damn yourself to consumption? Writing this paper, I've developed a new fear of the behemoth I just described that could be headed our way, making me feel like Lovecraft, minus the racisms. The likelihood of such an occurrence is not even validated with made-up statistical probabilities, but instead is pushed to the sectors of science fiction, never to be considered a reality. The thing about science fiction, though, as long as it's been around, things have been eerily foreshadowed by those who have no idea of the existence of such technology. Take, for example, the communicators in Star Trek back in 1966. Cell phones were thought to be impossible. Not smartphones, but cell phones. The novel by the name of Snow Crash, written by Neil Stephenson, describes VR similar to today's VR, even including a video feed and headphones. Of course, these are cherry-picked examples, as thousands of things that do appear in science fiction really are impossible to our knowledge. Nonetheless, I don't think we should limit our beliefs on what's possible in its relationship with science fiction, rather than look at science fiction for what's not impossible. Existential fear is the most permeable and deep-cutting state in the human condition, so much so that we've lost the natural fear of large cats, nature's non-homeo apex predator, globally. You not being afraid of cats is a huge deal in terms of the implications. Not because just cats alone, but the fact that humans very rarely fear animal attack, even though for a good bit, it was just animal attacks that we worried about. The influence of progress is not lost on me, and of course caveman Bunga wouldn't think to be afraid of falling rocks like we are today, same as we're not afraid of predatory animals like the Neolithic age. As we've grown, threats have changed, coming and going in different forms. Sure, there is global events that change the world forever, events like the recent pandemic, or even events perpetrated by man, like the dropping of atomic bombs, but it wouldn't be the end of us, not by a long shot. Going off my earlier statement about essentially removing ourselves from the food chain, we may have just placed ourselves at the bottom of the cosmic food chain. To finish off this video, let me just say, there's nothing to worry about besides normal stuff. When I say normal stuff, I mean normal person things exactly as I said. Get a job, have a family, or don't. Go on to do something revolutionary or be a person living in a van just getting the most out of life. Do what you want to do and what you feel like you should do. There's no pressure to succeed, failure isn't real, and it's all just a part of life. Don't live each day like your last, live each day like it's your first, and when you see those shouting that the end is upon us, you'll just remember, yeah, it sure feels that way, doesn't it? But the end is nowhere near, so stop having so much fear. If you enjoyed this video and made it this far, I'm incredibly grateful for you giving me a bit of your time to explain the terrifying wonders of the world. I'm thinking of turning the thumbnails I make for these videos into t-shirts. Let me know if you think that's something you'd be interested in the comments below. Until next week, I'm your host, Gideon, signing off. Peace out!